Hi class! This is the third part or part 3 of the video about the noting context clues. I had uploaded 2 videos already, the part 1 and the part 2. And now this is the last one. And still this video is based on 2020-2021 most essential learning competencies. Determine the meaning of words and expressions that reflect the local culture by noting context clues. And our objectives in this video: first, express appreciation to local culture and write a paragraph using one or more types of context clues. Sacrificing your life for another is perhaps the most courageous thing you can do. Alam natin na ang ating mga magulang ay nagsasakripisyo para sa kanilang mga anak. Pero ikaw na nanonood ngayon, tatanungin kita, kaya mo rin bang magsakripisyo for the sake of your parents? I have here a copy of a story about a daughter that even her life she sacrificed it alang-alang sa kanyang ama. Now I want you to read it with me, and after reading this story, I want you to answer the questions that follow. Nearly 500 years ago, the celestially august, the Son of Heaven, Yonglu, of the illustrious or Ming Dynasty, commanded the worthy official Kuan Yu that he should have a bell made of such size that the sound thereof might be heard for 100 li. And he further ordained that the voice of the bell should be strengthened with brass, and deepened with gold, and sweetened with silver, and that the face and the great lips of it should be graven with blessed sayings from the sacred books, and that it should be suspended in the center of the imperial capital to sound through all the many-colored ways of the city of Peking. Therefore, the worthy Mandarin Kuan Yu assembled the master molders and the renowned bellsmiths of the empire and all men of great repute in cunning in foundry work, and they measured the materials for the alloy, and treated them skillfully, and prepared the molds, the fires, the instruments, and the monstrous melting pot for fusing the metal. And they labored exceedingly, like giants, neglecting only rest and sleep and the comforts of life, toiling both night and day in obedience to Kuan Yu, and striving in all things to do the behest of the Son of Heaven. But when the metal had been cast, and the earthen mold separated from the glowing casting, it was discovered that, despite their great labor and ceaseless care, the result was void of worth, for the metals had rebelled one against the other. The gold had scorned alliance with the brass, the silver would not mingle with the molten iron. Therefore, the molds had to be once more prepared, and the fires rekindled, and the metal remelted, and all the work tediously and toilsomely repeated. The Son of Heaven heard and was angry, but spake nothing. A second time the bell was cast, and the result was even worse. Still the metals obstinately refused to blend one with the other, and there was no uniformity in the bell. And the sides of it were cracked and fissured, and the lips of it were slagged and split asunder, so that all the labor had to be repeated even a third time, to the great dismay of Kuan Yu. And when the Son of Heaven heard these things, he was angrier than before, and sent his messenger to Kuan Yu with a letter, written upon lemon-colored silk and sealed with the seal of the dragon, containing these words: From the mighty Yonglu, the sublime Taitung, the celestial and august, whose reign is called Ming, to Kuan Yu, the Fuyan. Twice thou hast betrayed the trust we have deigned graciously to place in thee. If thou fail a third time in fulfilling our command, thy head shall be severed from thy neck. Tremble and obey. Now, Kuan Yu had a daughter of dazzling loveliness, whose name, Kong'ai, was ever in the mouths of poets, and whose heart was even more beautiful than her face. Kongay loved her father with such love that she had refused 100 worthy suitors rather than make his home desolate by her absence. And when she had seen the awful yellow missive, sealed with the dragon seal, she fainted away with fear for her father's sake. And when her senses and her strength returned to her, she could not rest or sleep for thinking of her parents' danger, until she had secretly sold some of her jewels, and with the money to obtain had hastened to an astrologer, and paid him a great price to advise her by what means her father might be saved from the peril impending over him. So the astrologer made observations of the heavens, and marked the aspect of the silver stream, which we call the Milky Way, and examined the signs of the zodiac, the Huang Tao, or Yellow Road, and consulted the table of the 5 yin, or principles of the universe, and the mystical books of the alchemists. And after a long silence, he made answer to her, saying, "Gold and brass will never meet in wedlock. Silver and iron never will embrace, until the flesh of a maiden be melted in the crucible, until the blood of a virgin be mixed with the metals in their fusion." So Kongay returned home sorrowful at heart, but she kept secret all that she had heard, and told no one what she had done. At last came the awful day when the third and last effort to cast the great bell was to be made, and Kongay, together with her waiting woman, accompanied her father to the foundry, and they took their places upon a platform overlooking the toiling of the molders and the lava of liquefied metal. All the workmen wrought at their tasks in silence. There was no sound heard but the muttering of the fires, and the muttering deepened into a roar like the roar of typhoons approaching, and the blood-red lake of metal slowly brightened like the vermilion of a sunrise, and the vermilion was transmuted into a radiant glow of gold, and the gold whitened blindingly, like the silver face of a full moon. Then the workers ceased to feed the raving flame, and all fixed their eyes upon the eyes of Kuan Yu, and Kuan Yu prepared to give the signal to cast. But ere ever he lifted his finger, a cry caused him to turn his head, and all heard the voice of Kongay sounding sharply, sweet as a bird's song above the great thunder of the fires. "For thy sake, O my father!" And even as she cried, she leapt into the white flood of metal, and the lava of the furnace roared to receive her, and spattered monstrous flakes of flame to the roof, and burst over the verge of the earthen crater, and cast up a whirling fountain of many-colored fires, and subsided quakingly, with lightnings and with thunders and with mutterings. Then the father of Kongay, wild with his grief, would have leaped in after her, but that strong man held him back, and kept firm grasp upon him, until he had fainted away, and they could bear him like one dead to his home. And the serving woman of Kongay, dizzy and speechless for pain, stood before the furnace, still holding in her hands a shoe, a tiny, dainty shoe, with embroidery of pearls and flowers, the shoe of her beautiful mistress that was, for she had sought to grasp Kongay by the foot as she leaped, but had only been able to clutch the shoe, and the pretty shoe came off in her hand, and she continued to stare at it like one gone mad. But in spite of all these things, the command of the celestial and august had to be obeyed, and the work of the molders to be finished. Hopeless as the result might be, yet the glow of the metal seemed purer and whiter than before, and there was no sign of the beautiful body that had been entombed therein. So the ponderous casting was made, and lo, when the metal had become cool, it was found that the bell was beautiful to look upon, and perfect in form, and wonderful in color above all other bells. Nor was there any trace found of the body of Kongay. for it had been totally absorbed by the precious alloy and blended with the well-blended brass and gold, with the intermingling of the silver in the iron. And when they sounded the bell, its tones were found to be deeper and mellower and mightier than the tones of any other bell, reaching even beyond the distance of 100 li, like a pealing of summer thunder, and yet also like some vast voice uttering a name, a woman's name, the name of Kongay. And still between each mighty stroke there is a long, low moaning heard, and ever the moaning ends with a sound of sobbing and of complaining, as though a weeping woman should murmur, Haya! And still when the people hear that great golden moan, they keep silence. But when the sharp, sweet shuddering comes in the air, and the sobbing of Haya, then indeed do all the Chinese mothers, in all the many-colored ways of pecking, whisper to their little ones, Listen, that is Kongay crying for her shoe. That is Kongay calling for her shoe. Ang kwentong ating binasa kanina ay patungkol sa isang anak na isinakripisyo niya ang kanyang buhay upang sa ganoon ay maligtas lamang sa kapahamakan ang kanyang ama. Dahil ang kanyang ama ay inutusang gumawa ng bell o kaya ay isang malaking kampana na kailangan daw ang tunog ay maayos, maganda at malakas. Subalit sa kanyang pag-aayos, 2 beses siyang nag-attempt pero hindi nabubuo yung kanyang ginawang kampana. Kung kaya't nagalit yung nag-utos sa kanya at sinabihan siya sa pamamagitan ng sulat na kapag hindi niya nagawa ang ipinagagawa sa kanya ay pupugutan na siya ng kanyang ulo. Pero ang nangyari ay nabasa ng kanyang anak yung sulat na iyon dahil doon ay hindi siya makatulog, lagi niyang iniisip dahil baka nga mapatay na or baka patayin yung kanyang ama. Kung kaya't ang ginawa niya ay nag-ipon siya ng pera sa pamamagitan ng pagbibenta niya ng kanyang mga alahas dahil kailangan niya magbayad ng isang astrologer in order to ask kung ano ang pwedeng gawin at kung ano ang dapat gawin upang sa ganoon the bell na inuutos sa kanya ay kailangang mabuo. Pero heto ang sagot ng kanyang napagtanungan na astrologer. Gold and brass will never meet in wedlock. Silver and iron never will embrace until the flesh of a maiden be melted in the crucible, until the blood of a virgin be mixed with the metals in their fusion. Hindi pwedeng mabuo yung mga metals na pinagsama-sama nila, pero mabubuo lang daw ito sa isang paraan lamang na kailangan ay dugo daw, laman at dugo ng isang berhen ang mahalo doon. So, dahil siya ay isang berhen, dalaga, kung kaya't nung pangatlong beses na, the third time na nag-attempt ulit ang kanyang ama ay natakot siya na baka hindi mabuo ito dahil yun na yung last chance na gumawa siya ng bell. Pag hindi niya ito nabuo ay papatayin or pupugutan na yung kanyang tatay. Kung kaya yung apoy ay malakas para kumulo yung mga metals na pinaghalo-halo nila, ay nakatingin lang siya doon. Nakatingin si Kongay. Kung kaya nung bandang huli ang ginawa niya ay lumundag siya doon sa malaking kawa na kung saan ay iniluluto nila yung mga metal na yon. Pero bago siya lumundag papunta doon sa malaking kawa na yon, ay sumigaw siya na sabi niya, para sa iyo ito, aking tatay. So, narinig yon ng tatay niya. Paglingon niya, kukunin niya sana ang kanyang anak. Pero yung mga kalalakihang naroroon ay pinigilan siya hanggang sa siya ay nawalan ng lakas dahil maraming tao ang pumigil sa kanya. nakita ito ng kanyang katulong na babae at para pigilan ng katulong ay yung paa ang nahawakan niya, kung kaya't nahablot niya yung sapatos. At dahil doon, noong malamig na yung kanilang pinakuloang metal, doon nakita nila unti-unti ay bumuo or nabuo ito ng isang malaki at napakagandang hugis ng kampana. Iyan ang sakripisyo na nagawa ni Kongay sa kanyang ama. From this story, there are unfamiliar words here that we need to unlock. Here are the vocabulary words from this story that we need to unlock now in order for us to understand the meaning of this. Let's discuss. First, mallet, a hammer with a large wooden head. Para din siyang martilyo o martilyo kung tawagin. Number 2, shever, one of the small pieces into which a brittle thing is broken by sudden violence. Third, wreathing, to move or proceed with twists and turns. Number 4, cunning, getting what is wanted in a clever and often deceptive way or skillful. Number 5, foundry, a building or factory where metals are produced. Gusali o isang factory na kung saan ay doon ginagawa ang mga metals. Number 6, rekindled, lighted again, or ibig sabihin ay paliwanagin ulit or paapuyin ulit, yun ang ibig sabihin. 7, wedlock, the state of being married, ibig sabihin ng wedlock ay kasal. Ibig sabihin, ikinasal ang dalawang tao at nagsama sila. So, yun ibig sabihin ng wedlock. So, yung hindi kasal na nagsama, hindi wedlock ang tawag doon, live-in lang. Okay? Next, number 8, leap. Ibig sabihin nun ay jump. Number 9, moan. A long, low sound that someone makes because of pain or unhappiness. Ito yung umuungol dahil sa nararamdaman niyang sakit or hapdi. Or pwede rin sa unhappiness. There is an assessment here for you who are watching in this video in order to assess yourself if you understand the words or the new words or the new vocabulary that we had discussed earlier. This is about the context clues. Tingnan ninyong mabuti. Yung context clues, di ba? We had already discussed about the context clues last time, and that is the part 1 first video, and then the second video ay binigyan ko kayo ng assessment to assess yourself kung naintindihan ninyo ang context clues. And now part 3 is about the cultural context. Read and figure out the meaning of each bold and underlined word using context clues. In the tower of the great bell, now the mallet is lifted to smite the lips of the metal monster. A mallet is A, an axe, B, a saw, C, a knife, D, a hammer. So, the answer is letter D, a hammer. Number 2, smite. Smite is to A, caress, B, cut, C, hit, and D, touch. So if we say smite, pinalo, di ba? Pinukpok. So the answer is letter C, hit. All the green and gold tiles of the temple are vibrating. The wooden goldfish above them are wreathing against the sky. Wreathing means A, hanging, B, leading, C, pointing, and D, twisting. So the answer is letter D, twisting. Therefore, the worthy Mandarin Kuan Yin assembled the master molders and the renowned bellsmiths of the empire and all men of great repute in cunning in foundry work. So, number 4, cunning means A. Expert, B. Innocent, C. Master, D. Skillful. So the answer is letter D. Skillful. Number 5, foundry means A. Factory, B. Farm, C. Market, and D. Garden. Therefore, the molds had to be once more prepared, and the fires rekindled, and the metal remelted, and all the work tediously and toilsomely repeated. Number 6, rekindled means A. Lighted again, B. Fueled the fire, C. Stopped the fire, and D. Set on fire again. So the answer is letter A. Lighted again. Number 7, toilsomely means A. Hardly, B. Lightly, C. Mindfully, and D. Slowly. So the answer is letter A. Hardly. Gold and brass will never meet in wedlock. Silver and iron never will embrace, until the flesh of a maiden be melted in the crucible, until the blood of a virgin be mixed with the metals in their fusion. Number 8, what does this statement mean? A. Gold, brass, silver, and iron will fuse when mixed with blood. B. The blood of a virgin maiden is made up of gold, brass, silver, and iron. C. Gold, brass, silver, and iron will fuse when mixed with the blood of a virgin. And D. Gold, brass, silver, and iron will never be fused together by a virgin maiden. So the answer is letter C. Gold, brass, silver, and iron will fuse when mixed with the blood of a virgin. And even as she cried, she leaped into the white flood of metal. Number 9, leaped means A. Jumped, B. Ran, C. Skipped, D. Squatted. So the answer is letter A. Jumped. Now here's another assessment again. This is regarding the culture. Read the selections below and take note of the culture being presented. Letter A. It is truly heartwarming to see the many Filipinos, despite their limited movement and resources, have found ways to help other Filipinos in battling the pandemic. Individuals and groups have expressed empathy and gratitude to various affected sectors, especially among healthcare workers who are the most exposed to the virus. According to the DOH, more than 1,000 healthcare workers have been infected with the pathogen. This prompted the locals to donate personal protective equipment or PPE to protect them as they fight every day to save lives. Here are the questions. What is the passage about? And next, who are more exposed to the virus? So just read that so that you will be able to answer this. Letter B. Asian people are known all over the world for their strong cultural values and intelligent minds. This continent has given birth to many famous scientists, celebrities, and politicians. Although this continent does not boast of many developed countries, many developing countries within this continent are on the threshold of becoming developed. Asia as a continent was initially under the colonial rule for a very long time except Japan. Many nations like India, China, Pakistan and Afghanistan have suffered the brunt of oppressive colonial rule by Europeans and Americans for a very long period of time. The first question is, who are known for their strong cultural values and intelligent minds? The answer is Asian people. Number 2 question, what Asia countries suffered from colonial rule? India, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Based on the story, The Soul of the Great Bell, that we have read earlier, try to answer this activity. Just contextualize it. Determine the meaning of the underlined words based on context by choosing the letter of your answer. Number 1, it was an awful day, horrible and dreadful. For the third time, the casting of the great bell was unsuccessful. A, fearful. B, foul. C, happy. And D, nasty. Number 2, Kuan Yu might think that the result of the making of the great bell for the third and last time was much more likely an egregious failure because of what happened to his daughter. A, glaring. B, grievous. C, scandalous. And D, shameful. Number 3, his animosity or ill feeling because of what happened to his daughter was so great. A, anger. B, bitterness. C, hate. D, malice. Number 4, wild with his grief, he felt deep remorse and would have leaped in after his daughter, but strong men held him back. A, guilt. B, regret. C, shame. D, sorrow. Number 5, how the blending with the well-blended brass and gold, with the intermingling of the silver and the iron after Kongay leaped, was a conundrum, a puzzle that's difficult to solve. A, mystery. B, problem. C, query. And D, question. Here is the reflection for you to answer. Reflect on the culture imparted by the story in the following questions. Write your ideas in paragraph form. Number 1, if you were Kongay, would you sacrifice your life for your father too? Why? Number 2, do you think sacrificing one's life to show love to parents is still observed today? Why do you say so? And number 3, in what ways can you show your love to your parents, fellow men, country, and to God? Thank you so much for watching. Our lesson for noting context clues is finished. Umaasa ako na kahit papaano ay may natutunan kayo sa ating topic about the context clues. To complete the lesson, please watch part 1, 2, and 3 about the noting context clues. God bless us. Bye!